Hey, Black women. I'm going to start talking to you about a series of the psychology of Black women and how things that we have been taught and how society teaches us and treats us in this world affects our behavior, our opinion of each other, and how we deal with things in this world that often end up turning around and being real detrimental to us based off of how we've been taught to see things and react to things. And I decided to start this series of videos because of what happened to me personally tonight with another Black YouTuber that I had normally, I guess I was deceived into thinking that we had a decent rapport, which is Black women making money. Now, mind you, in the comments, if you go watch that live that was posted tonight, March 10th, right? I was speaking about the Black woman who had visited her channel before as a host, who was given her very toxically, overly biased account of the Black woman, which was one of the 4 Americans in Mexico incident. You know, I never really call people's names in these stories because I don't know them, so I'm not gonna assume like the rest of these people who cover the stories on these individuals as if I'm an authority on them, because I know I'm not. So that particular lady, that particular Black woman that was involved in that incident, I can acknowledge and recognize that she was severely traumatized. Okay? So I'm concerned with her being traumatized. I'm concerned with her humanity. I'm concerned with the fact that I know that the way that society looks at Black women and this idea of them having this radical identity based on the gender of who we are, and that we're often perceived as an anticipated threat in a lot of ways, right, is a reality. And I know that a lot of Black women that like to pretend that if they code switch or if they work in white corporate America, that they're not looked at this way, as well as the Black woman that comes out of the projects and who the Manosphere guys and the Passport Bros and others tend to make fun of every day as being these pretty much like Mago woman throwback rejects, is not how they think about all of us, when in fact it is. So there is a particular woman psychiatrist, right, that I think has it head on when she talks about the behavior and the relationships of Black women with each other. And it's something that I never really thought about before, but because I see it a lot lately, especially on YouTube, I think that the professor from the University of Laverne is on point, right? And she's not as important, Jian Young, she's not really as important as her work to me, because we see it every day. We just don't put an actual narrative to it. All right, so what happened tonight when I was watching that live with Cherie on Black Women Making Money is that the host that she usually has on, or had on, the Victoria woman that is supposed to be a person that works in debt resolution, she's very critical of Black women. And I know she doesn't see it and Cherie doesn't see it because it's her live, and she feels that whenever she picks someone for her lives, that person is, I guess, to her liking and what she feels is going to benefit the live. But she doesn't have the vantage point of where we sit as the viewer and the subscriber. And it doesn't take long for this woman, Victoria, to keep speaking before the words that come out of her mouth scream, I have a problem with other Black women, period. And it is something that a lot of Black women are used to, and we know it well. We have been attacked by this, if you pay attention, in America your entire life. If you're a dark woman, you usually have problems with lighter women, and vice versa. If you're a woman like me that has curly hair versus another one that has coily hair, they have a problem with you. If you're a very attractive woman and you come in contact with another woman who doesn't think she is very attractive, or she's not as attractive as you, you'll have a problem. If you're a certain size and this one is another size, it's a problem. If this one has a belief in this and that one has a belief in that, it's another problem. And of course, this is an extreme extenuating factor, an extension of the psychological effects of slavery. But because so many of us, because we work around white people like Cherie and others, we feel like if we code switch enough, that blackness, won't be so visible to the people who are looking at you with all of these issues that they have with you, regardless of how much you perform for the master. It just is what it is. So in this actual study that this doctor did, when she was looking at the relationships that African Americans have between each other, she started to speak a lot about how the gendered racism that's attached to black women, with this whole belief that, this particular woman is this radical threat to whatever it is that she's got going on. We gotta constantly defame her, take her down, discuss how we're always concerned with her physical safety and another person's physical safety, depending on their proximity to her, because we have issues with controlling the behaviors that come from women that don't have as much education as we feel they should, right? And this goes on a lot. Because even if you go and you watch that live after Cherie started speaking to me in a parent-child type of tone, I thought it was funny because, of course, I had no voice because she didn't have a link enabled, nor was I able to just humble her ass back down to how she was talking to me. But given an opportunity, I have no problem with it. But the fact is, that's happening too much on here on YouTube. And then the person tries to come out of the attack that they wage on the other person, with it trying to make it appear as if they are for black women, and now because you weren't with their original plan or their original thought or perception of whatever it is they was trying to portray, you're the issue. When all it was a difference of opinions. And if I don't like something, I have every right not to like it, as do you. But when someone is literally down talking another person based off of what happened to that person in the aftermath, you need to stop. You just really need to stop, because there was no way of anyone predicting what would happen. Now, yes, when you do not prepare for things, a lot of stuff can happen wrong in traveling, which is not the point, right? Because I've traveled many places in this world and have had many incredible situations where I was like, wow, I wish I would have just stayed home. Nothing as traumatic as to what happened in Mexico with the 4 Americans, but stuff like having an issue with your room, people openly expressing anti-blackness and having a problem with you being American. That is also another problem. But when it comes to how this woman Victoria was attacking the character and the intelligence of one of the 4 American victims, it was relentless. She just kept going in as if she had something to prove about this woman being not smart enough to prevent what happened to her. When we all know that in life, unless you have dreams of, predictions and you're an oracle, you don't know what is going to happen to you. And no one in this world can prepare that well or that good to prevent whatever is destined to happen to you. Like you listen, people go outside every day and it's their last day on earth. People can sit in their homes sit on the couch, be minding their business, don't have anything to do with outside, and it's their last day on earth. If you Google, there are several cases where women, unfortunately, it's always women, were sitting in their living room on their couch watching television or simply lying in their beds, and a bullet came from God knows where, and that was their last day on earth. So to Monday morning quarterback everyone after something has happened is in poor taste, extremely poor taste. But what black women need to really stop doing is jumping on the bandwagon with everyone else and always trying to tear apart and tear down the actions and the existence of black women. Poverty is not a crime. Poverty is not an indictment of how lowly educated or how stupid you are. It is a systematic set of conditions that are always going to be active in American society because of the capitalism and the stratification of that capitalism in this country we live in that was created out of slavery. So when you have all that going on, you don't need black women talking about the behaviors of another black woman versus another black woman, when all we need to do is realize that if you don't respect each other, no one else in America will respect you. And it doesn't do anyone any good for you to call yourself being the school teacher of other black women to do a live talking about something that really has no value in regards to a situation that happened where lives were lost because of a climate that already existed before those individuals got there that they could do nothing about. Mexico has been dangerous from its inception, okay? I lived in California about 20 years ago, and I used to frequent Tijuana by way of San Diego because it was right there. And for all the Californians, you know, there's several parts in California you can go to Mexico to and go to, you know, like Tijuana or whatever. And people, it used to be a normal thing for people from San Diego to just literally go shop a day of, take a day trip and go to Tijuana and shop and whatever you want to do because it was cheaper. Now, back then, I could say it wasn't as dangerous and wasn't as complicated as it is today in 2023, but it was still Mexico nonetheless. You had to be careful. So I'm telling you this story to let you know that it didn't matter who it was in Mexico as an American. It is not your territory, and they don't really care for you. So you need to keep your behind out of Mexico. Black women, you need to stop looking for every reason in the world to criticize another black woman when you claim you're for black women. Now, she tried to use that reverse attack on me when I was going in on the Victoria lady. But I had a reason to do that. Because when you listen to that live and you hear the toxicity coming out of that woman's mouth towards another black woman, simply because she's poor, from the South, was overweight, and was not as attractive as that woman with all that ton of makeup on her face and everything else is trying to portray, did not look like. And that's really what a lot of that nonsense is about. Too long and so often, a lot of black women are torn down mentally because of the phenotype that is an issue for black self-hating males. When they're constantly being torn down as black women, starting off as little girls, teenagers to young women to grown women who have these sick and twisted voices in their head, they project all that insane toxicity on other black women when it has nothing to do with the situation. Instead of that dead woman, Victoria, just talking about the situation, if you watch the video, she went out of her way to attack the education, right? The character, the thinking skills, the problem-solving skills that one of the 4 Americans, the black woman, had, instead of just talking about expressing empathy and sympathy for the situation and trying to use that as a teachable moment to teach other women about the travel.state.gov website and how to use it to prevent and protect your safety when you travel abroad. Not to tear down a woman because she spoke in a colloquial Geechee dialect and that they look poor, because you have been brainwashed to think that if you don't look like a fake white woman, you don't look proper. This is all the stuff that comes from people like Cherie and others with this code switching nonsense in their head, and how assimilating into white America is more important than acculturating into white America when you work in those ridiculously overstressed and fuck microaggression, macroaggressive environments. Look, we don't need all that. Take your passive aggressive nonsense that you get from working around them white people all day and take it somewhere else. If you're going to do a live giving black women instruction about travel, do it in a positive manner. Don't do it using a black woman who clearly is exhibiting signs of having the head bitch in charge syndrome or problem, because she couldn't find anything positive to say about the black woman from Carolina that had the incident in Mexico. All she could do was think of negative things to talk about, and how the woman should have done this, could have known that, should have known this, and then used her personal experience with an affiliation she had with a Mexican person to make it seem as if she was an authority on Mexican travel, Mexican people, and the outcome of those individuals she does not know anything about and is not an authority of, on how they could have handled the situation better, while alluding to them having nefarious practices in that area without her knowing a damn thing about anything. That's why I said what I said. I said she was a loser, because she is. She was acting like one. You don't know those people. You do not know the entire story. You're only going by the same thing I'm going by, which is bits and pieces of different information from multiple sources of news channels and information sources, and you're piecing it together the same way I did. So you need to shut your mouth and be a little bit more positive towards black women, instead of acting like some type of elitist and thinking that you know better when you don't know shit. She made a comment about, why would you travel somewhere where you don't speak the language? Well, according to her own story, she did the same goddamn thing, except for she thought it was justified when she did it because she had a Mexican boyfriend with her. Now, let me tell you something, speaking firsthand, since I'll piggyback off of her bullshit, right? You know, guys, you saw me travel to Paris this summer, right? And have an incident with the ticket agent at the airport in Paris because of me being an American. Probably had a lot to do with me being black as well, but I chronicalized that for you. You saw me go through those issues. I told you what I was doing. You saw me have to stay in the airport overnight to make sure I got on that plane the next morning because they were overselling the seats. So anyway, I'm telling you personally, okay? Even when you parle français, right? It doesn't make a difference if you speak the language or not when you are a foreigner, okay? I can speak French. I'm not a Parisian. I speak American Creole, which is enough to communicate with Parisians, right? They didn't give a shit about that. They didn't care. They called me an annoying American. if you, oh God, I still have that video, I think, in my phone. I'll probably repost it, right? They were calling me all, all kinds of names just because I was from America. All right. One guy even told me he didn't like when Americans would come to his country. Parisians have such a horrible reputation of dealing with Americans when it comes to the airport, customs, oh my God, reservations, concierge, all types of things that even when I came home, and I believe I had put the video up of when I went to take my money, my euros that I didn't spend in Europe to the bank, to Bank of America, to transfer the money back to, the US dollar. The manager of the bank, him and I started to commiserate about our trip to Paris. And he had told me that his experience in Paris was so bad. And he also spoke the language, right? That he would never, ever go back to that country again. So I tell you that story to just let you know that the shit Victoria was talking tonight was just that, shit. She don't speak another language. At least she never said she did. And just because you're with somebody that speaks the language does not mean where you're going that the people there give a fuck. Because 9 times out of 10, they don't. Okay? They don't. Because they didn't care with me. And they didn't care with a lot of other people. So, clearly, that don't have nothing to do with it. So, all that, she could have done this, what could have been, what should have been, none of that has anything to do with the real problem. The real problem at hand is the disrespect and the fact that all those psychological effects of slavery that were taught to us as a people, and how we look down on each other and dislike each other simply because we were taught to be that way and we want to stay that way, is the problem. That's the same way Cherie felt like it was her job to try to go into the parent-child role and try to talk to me in a scolding way because of the fact that I had no way to communicate back. All right? Now, unless she got some personal relationship with this woman, Victoria, that I don't know about, there was really no reason for her to do what she did. She could have, if she wanted to silence me, she know what she could have did. She could have stopped me from being allowed to speak in the chat, which I did. I thought she did at one point, right? But she claimed she didn't, and then I realized that she didn't do that. But she could have done that. Or she could have just did what I do normally when people do that in the chat. I just time them out and be like, oh, we're not talking about that right now. Or I ignore it. But unless it's a male. If it's a male, then it's a totally different story. I go completely berserk the way she did on me. But you know one thing about how she did me? It is another example of how black women choose to have this innate hatred for other black women as a result of the legacy of slavery and the psychological effects of slavery and generational dysfunction, right? So, we as black women gotta stop standing on the backs of other black women and stomping them down. We gotta stop that. If a black woman makes a mistake, she makes a mistake. She's human like the rest of us. You either help her through it, talk her through it, assist her in some type of way, but it is not always necessary to do to black women what the whole world constantly does to us by promoting these gender racist stereotypes upon us to make it appear as if we are these women that, have this perceived threat about us in every way. When I say that, I mean, think about how they talk about us. She's loud. She's ignorant. She's boisterous. She's violent. She's intimidating. She's aggressive. She's this, she's that. It's never in any positive or any humanistic way that another person can have empathy for your humanity and understand that you have a right to go through the full range of emotions just like everyone else. It's always beat her down. She deserves to be beat down the same way they used to literally flog you in public, because that is what has been taught to us. So it's a wrap. She don't have to worry about me being on her lives and stuff like that. And I'm sorry that I ever extended her the courtesy and kindness that I did, by always trying to promote her and get people to flock to her, because I felt like she had something to give and to offer to other black women. But when you so readily and easily talk to me and treat me like that, as if she was going to school me, right? I remember what Maya Angelou said. When a believer person, when they show you who they are the first time. So she has no more lessons to teach me. I just want to start teaching other black women about the psychology of how we deal with each other and what we got to do to stop that. And I'll take my time in doing it, because I really could just breeze do it in one video, but I want to extend it so that we could talk about a few things that come up a lot when it is black women versus black women. We're all very smart. We're all very headstrong to a certain extent, and that's a good thing, never a negative thing. But what we got to do is start having a lot more respect for each other when we need to. And honestly, if little Victoria lady wasn't going in on the black woman from the Mexican incident, I wouldn't have felt like I had to go in on her, because my opinion was, you are a nasty wretch of a human being. Talking about Victoria right now. This black woman from the incident in Mexico sat there and watched 3 of her family members, 2 of them get killed in front of her and another one get severely injured. And then she had to wrestle with the thought of the fact that she might lose her life next at any given time. I know that Victoria woman don't know nothing about being in situations like that, because she's never probably been in anything like that. Me, though, however, on the other hand, being a person in law enforcement, dealing with criminals on an everyday basis, and being in situations where I have let off my gun and had to protect myself and others in very dangerous situations just like that, I know the level of fear people go through, and the adrenaline situation your body goes through while you're in that situation, before you get in it and after you're out of it. So for her to confidently and wrongly, toxically speak about things she don't know a goddamn thing about was what made me say she's a loser. And she really is, in my opinion, because I would love to see her ass in that situation and how well she would handle it. Now, I know because she's so smart and an elitist, she would say she'd never be in that position. Okay, possible. But guess what? You never know where you will be when something like that can happen to you, if not worse. So if you're going to talk about somebody's story and you call yourself educating other black women on it, try to use a little tenderness next time and a little compassion for your fellow black woman who goes through being berated and beat down every day, just like I assume you do, because you got a lot of shit going on in there about other black women with you. Because if any of y'all watch that live and you find any ounce of positivity or compassion towards that black woman from Victoria, let me know. Because I didn't see it at all. I'll be back. Night.